What's up, guys, and welcome back to the channel. And in today's video, we're going to be trading fighters from other promotions to the UFC and vice versa, getting rid of UFC fighters that don't need to be on the roster or replacing them for better fighters or fighters that would be more valuable to the company. Now, these trades will never happen because we know they're not going to do trades. The UFC will just sign free agents, but they're not going to get rid of any of their own fighters. And they also don't want to acknowledge that other promotions do have some better fighters. I'm not going to be the guy to be I actually think Patchy Mix would be the Bantamweight champion, man. I'm not going to be the guy to say a PFL guy would be the UFC champion, but they do have some champions and top contenders that definitely would give the top 15 or top 10 guys in the UFC a run for their money. And that's who I'm going to be talking about. I've got 15 different trades today, all in different weight classes, at least one per weight class. And yeah, we're going to be going from flyweight all the way up to heavyweight. There's going to be a few more for some divisions. But yeah, you let me know in the comments which fighters I forgot, who else needs to be traded to the UFC, and who can the UFC afford to get rid of and kick out. But yeah, let's get started with the flyweight division. Now, I lied. I said flyweight. I don't know what fucking division these two are in. Lemos is a strawweight and fucking Pacheco's a bantamweight, I'm pretty sure, but who cares? I'll include some women's fights because, the comments have been telling me, Left Lane, you're doing some good videos, but you never talk about females. We need to see more women in the videos. I'm lying. No one's ever said that. But no, I do think Pacheco is actually someone that the UFC should have. I'm not going to talk about it for too long, but she is quite good. She does have a win recently over Kayla Harrison. It's actually the only loss on Kayla Harrison's record. So I think she would be a valuable signing. And Lemos, I picked her as the person to get rid of just in terms of she's a lesbian Brazilian who looks pretty similar, who's old as well, so the UFC can easily get rid of her and they're not going to suffer anything because of it. Anyway, let's move on to the flyweight division. Next up, we got Matheus Nicolau for Kyoji Horiguchi. Now, Kyoji Horiguchi right now fights in Ryzen, I believe, is where he fights. I think he fights in Ryzen. He did actually fight in the UFC back in the day. He was one of Demetrius Johnson's title defenses. If you ask a casual fan to name Demetrius Johnson's title defenses, they'll name Henry Cejudo, they'll name Joseph Benavidez, and then they might name Tim Elliott, and then maybe they'll name Kyoji Horiguchi. But that's the extent of which casual fans can name DJ's title defenses. But Kyoji's pretty good, and I'm not saying, because there's not that many great flyweights outside the UFC, in my opinion. I was kind of gonna come on here and be let's trade Makayev back, but I don't think we're gonna cut Makayev to then trade him back and lose a fighter off the roster. And as much as I would say let's get rid of a fucking El Bazi, I'm making this based off who really just doesn't offer anything and who's not gonna challenge for a belt or present a threat in the future in the division. Who can we just get rid of and no one's gonna care? And in my opinion, we can get rid of Matheus Nicolau. Now, he's fighting this weekend against Asuel Mabayev. Yeah, he's probably gonna lose. If he wins, good for him. Guys Tim Elliott we could probably get rid of, but he's kind of handy to have around. But who the fuck's ever said I'm really hyped up for this Matheus Nicolau fight, man? He's a savage. He's a really nasty striker. No one's ever said that. So I think we could get rid of him. Not I think Kyoji's going to be a fucking champion, but we brought over Kaya Sakura. I think we need to bring over some more Japanese fighters. Let's bring Kyoji over. Let's do a fucking show in Japan and just get him back for a few more fights at the end of his career. I think it'd be pretty fun. I don't know why he left. Maybe he's on really bad terms with the UFC and this will never happen, but I think it wouldn't be too unreasonable to bring Kyoji back. Anyway, let's move on to another fighter. Now, this is the second and the final women's fight that I'm going to be talking about. Let's trade Viviane Araujo for Dakota Decheva. Dakota Decheva is the fucking somewhat attractive British chick that fights in PFL. It's undefeated. She's pretty good and she's young as well, so she's promotable. You can get behind her, build her in the UFC, and then maybe have an interesting fighter in the future. I think if we're going to trade any female fighters, if we need to get some interesting fighters brought over in the 125 division, because once Shevchenko retires, I'm sorry, I ain't trying to see fucking Erin Blanchfield versus Macy Barber for a fucking title. Ain't no one cares about that shit. But Dakota Decheva, she's got some promotability and she's a rare, good female fighter and would be much better than Molly McCann, both looks-wise and fighting-wise. So yeah, let's bring her over, build her slowly, and then give her a top 5 opponent in 2 years' time or something like that. Anyway, let's move on to actual fighters that people care about with the men and talk about the bantamweight division. Next up, we need to trade Mario Batista's bum ass for fucking Patchy Mix. Now, a lot of these trades are because I actually don't think these Bellator PFL, Ryzen, all these fighters will do that well. And I want to just see all the guys that try and be casual and be like, actually, I think Magomedov would actually be a really tough test for guys like Sean O'Malley. Like, I want some of these dumb fucking guys that just act like they're more hardcore than they are. Like, it doesn't make you more hardcore to have retarded takes. Like, I'm sorry, Impika Sanganai had a close fight with fucking Eblin. Like, I'm not trying to hear that Impika Sanganai's a bum. Like, I'm not trying to I'm happy that he made some money and shit, but, like, I'm not trying to hear that some of these fucking Bellator guys are going to beat, like, UFC champions. But I actually want to make the trades just so we can see it and just so we can be like, yeah, fuck off. These Bellator guys ain't all that. But Patchy Mix, I do think is a pretty solid fighter. He's 20-1. His only loss was to fucking Juan Archuleta, I'm pretty sure. So, you guys, I'm a hardcore fan. I'm not a casual. But Batista, get rid of him. We don't need him in the sport. He offers no value to the UFC. I mean, to be fair, he could kind of be a good person to just hate in the division and someone that's just going to get booed, and it provides him an opportunity to sort of be a heel. But if he's not going to do that and if he's just going to be a boring cunt, then let's get rid of him. Bring over Patchy Mix and we can sort out some of the fucking hardcore fans that think he would beat Marab. But anyway, let's move on to another fighter. Next up, let's trade Fabricio Andrade, who is the ONE FC champion, for Robert Font. Rob Font, look, I do think, if we're saying, who would win in a fight between these guys, I think it's probably pretty competitive. But Fabricio Andrade, it gives some... I also think there's just benefits to, like, bringing over hyped up guys. Like, Ryan Derrida, no one's going to care that much, I guess, but especially because the main event of that card is Prates versus Neil Magny. I mean, Prates will win, but, like, no one cares about that card. But, like, Kai Sakura got some interest. Like, when MVP gets brought over, there's interest. When Kayla gets brought over, there's interest. Now, I'm not saying that fucking this guy's, like, on the same level as MVP and Kayla Harrison, but it does cause interest of the people that being like, this guy's actually really good, This guy's a ONE FC champion, and it then kind of stirs up that thing of like, other promotions champions going to be able to hold up in the UFC. And Rob Font is a good kind of gatekeeper test, and I think, obviously, I'm not saying make this fight, but I'm saying if we trade Rob Font, who I think is well past any stage of value in his career, he's like 1-4 in his last 5, but yeah, I think this is a solid trade. I don't think Andrade is like elite, but he's named Andrade, so we know Jessica Andrade. She's a female. Maybe the name Andrade only works if you're a fucking trans woman, not just a normal dude. But I think Fabricio Andrade could do alright. He's pretty young too, so slow roll him a little bit, build him. I actually don't mind what they're doing with Derrida. Like, these guys coming over, like MVP, obviously you got to give him a good fight, Kayla Harrison, but like I don't mind giving Derrida like an outside the top 15 opponent. Like, I actually don't mind it. Just to see where they're at. And because if you just chuck them in the top 5 immediately, like, if we go and fucking give Kai Sakura, they're going to give him a top guy, but like, if we go and give fucking Derrida to like Cannonier or some shit and he just gets smoked, it's going to be like, alright, well, that was dumb. Like, what the fuck's he here for? Like, no one's going to care. But at least we can kind of build a bit of hype, and if he subs like GM3, we can be like, oh yeah, he's pretty good. And then maybe 2 fights down the line, he gets KO'd. But, like, that's what I mean. I think it's actually beneficial to give these guys a lower-ranked guy. So, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Andrade, bring him over. Rob Font can fucking go retire or go ONE FC. I don't care. Anyway, let's move on to another fighter. Let's go trade Paul Hughes for Kelvin Kattar. Now, Paul Hughes is 12-1. His only loss on his career record is to Jordan Vucenic, who recently made his debut in the UFC. Now, a lot of these guys could just come to the UFC without being traded. Like, I'm not saying we actually need to trade it. Like, Yaroslav Amosov, he's not going to be in this video. He is a former Bellator champ. He was, I think, like, he's like 27-1, but he got KO'd by Jason Jackson. And Jason Jackson is not very good. But so he's not going to be on here because he's a free agent and he's probably just going to come over anyway. They'll probably just bring him over and they'll have him fight fucking Li Jingliang or some shit like that. Come back to this video of we sign Yaroslav Amosov and then he fights Li Jingliang in his debut, or like Jeff Neal or some shit like that. But who am I talking about? Fucking Paul Hughes is actually solid. He's young as well. He's got room to build in his career. Now, I know he's fighting in the PFL or Bellator at lightweight. I think it's kind of a common practice. A lot of these guys come over, you cut down a weight class. He's fought at featherweight before. He's not super lean at lightweight. I think he could easily fight at featherweight. And I think we trade him for Kelvin Kattar. Similar to the Rob Font kind of trade that I'm talking about is these guys are Rob Font's past his peak. Calvin Kattar, they're past their peak. Like, I think, as much as I like Kattar, and he'll give him some fun fights, like, if this was, like, 2 years ago, just after the Max loss, I'm like, nah. Oh, man, it was a bit more than 2 years ago. Like, if this was after the Max loss, I'm like, no, you don't need to fucking get rid of him. But he's just lost to Aljo. He's injured. He pulled out of a fight with fucking Kyle Nelson. Like, I don't think the fans are going to be like, oh, bro, Calvin Kattar, we really missed the best of Kattar. Like, I think it's a pretty safe bet that if you got rid of him, it wouldn't be too bad. And I don't mind the idea of getting rid of some of the veteran fighters and then bringing in some younger talent. Like, I'm not saying get rid of fucking Kattar and then bring over, like, Patricio Pitbull. Because you guys might be like, where's Pitbull? Pitbull's 37 and he's mid. He's not mid, but, like, at this stage, he's not all that and he's losing fights. Like, he's lost some recent fights. So that's why I'm saying, everyone's going to be like, oh, why not Pitbull? Pitbull's 37. I'm not trading a 38-year-old for a 37-year-old. Like, if we're going to get rid of someone, bring a new, younger guy in. That's why, like, Dorita, the trade is kind of dumb. Like, I liked the Esakura trade. I liked the MVP trade, even though MVP's on the older side. But, like, some of these trades make sense. But if you're bringing over a fucking, 36-year-old, 37-year-old, unless you're just chucking them right into the top 5, which they're not going to do with, a Pitbull. I mean, maybe they could. They could do, a Pitbull versus, Yair or some shit. But, I think Paul Hughes, younger guy, give him a bit of a slope. He's fighting AJ McKee in PFL. AJ McKee could have gone on here. I did originally have him, and then I was like, I don't really care about him. You know, he's black. Who cares? He can stay in PFL, stay in the bum leagues. I'm kidding. No, but AJ McKee's solid. He's also a guy that we can bring over, but I've limited it to 15. I didn't want a fucking odd number, you know? Or that 15 is an odd number. I'm retarded. I didn't want a 17. That's fucking weird. 15's a good number. But someone's going to take that out of context. But yeah, bring Paul Hughes over. Have him fight fucking, I don't know, who can he fight? Even Arnold Allen's probably a step too high. Have him fight Barboza. Have Paul Hughes debut against fucking Barboza. And if he gets smoked, then that just shows that PFL fighters are bums. Anyway, let's move on to another trade. Next trade, let's trade Islam Omarov for Giga Chikadze. This is a 16-0 guy. I'm acting like I've ever watched any of his fights. I just searched up undefeated fighters outside the UFC. But trust me, guys, this guy's a problem, man. But yeah, Giga Chikadze, another guy older, not really benefiting the company, pulling out of fights, I guess, sometimes. Injured, this kind of stuff. He says he's got fight news coming soon. He's probably going to be fighting fucking Gene Silva or some shit, maybe. Or maybe Bryce Mitchell, or maybe he's fighting, because Bryce Mitchell said he's got fight news soon, spelt F-I-T-E, because he's a normal person. But no, Giga, he's past his best. I didn't realize, I thought this guy was 32, 33. Bro, he's 36, he's washed, or 35, but he's past his best. Allen tuned him up. I mean, it was close-ish, but no one's gonna miss Giga Chikadze. Let's send him off and bring over this guy, and then you'll see an undefeated guy whose name ends in OV, who's 16-0, and you'll be like, oh yeah, this guy's going to be a problem. And it'll bring hype. Originally I was like, let's just get rid of Movzar. But I think it's good to have undefeated fighters. Having undefeated fighters, even if they're annoying as fuck, like Movzar, and morally questionable as people. It's good to have undefeated guys. Because it's when are they going to lose their zero? And it gives them, hype. There's not that many undefeated fighters in the rankings right now. There's not. There's a few, Ian Gary, Shavkat, Ilya, Movzar, there's not Tyra, but there's not, heaps. If you look up and down the rankings, most of the guys have losses. But if you have some undefeated guys, it's this guy's the next fucking big thing. So let's bring over this guy. Everyone will just assume he's the next fucking Khabib of the sport, just based on how he looks, and it'll be good. So we can get some hype around him. He's also a featherweight, so yeah. Need some, well, we don't need new, but, it would be good to get over some, we got some older guys like Barboza, Kattar, Giga. There's some older Ortega. Ortega's not even that old, but he's just washed. But, we've got the older guard at featherweight, Josh Emmett. We've got the older guard at featherweight, which can kind of just go away because they're not going to win belts and they're taking up rankings. So let's bring in the new guys and have the entire top 15 as, all fucking up-and-comers. Anyway, let's move on to another trade. This is probably the main one, I guess, or one of the main ones. Usman Nurmagomedov, everyone knows who he is, for Beneil Dariush. Now, this is not some obscure shit of me looking up some random guy. Usman's probably the first guy that people are more automatically go to when they're talking about guys that the UFC needs to bring in. And I don't think he's, top 5 caliber. I think people are acting like this guy's, lit. The Dagestani camp obviously glazed him and be like, oh yeah, trust me guys, Usman would be the champion if it wasn't for Islam there. It's no, he wouldn't. He's he's not that good. Like, he took Brent Primus to a decision. And he took his last guy to a decision as well, who was a decent fighter, to be fair. But, like, I think Usman, he's good, but I don't think he's, like, elite. Like, I don't think he's, like, top 5. Like, I think Oliveira takes care of him. I think Harman takes care of him. I think maybe, like, a good test, if this guy came into the UFC, would be, like, who can we give him that's reasonable? Fiziev, maybe. A Fiziev fight would be cool. A Gamrot fight would be cool. I'm going to trade Gamrot in a second. You'll see who I'm trading him for. But yeah, like, Usman needs to be brought over. I think Beneil's the guy. I think Beneil's the guy who's past his peak. He's not going to offer much. He's going to just probably get fed to people anyway. I think have this guy fight Paddy Pimblett, have him lose, and then you can trade him for Usman Nurmagomedov. Now, we need to bring Usman over. Or not need to, like, we're not going to, the UFC's not going to fucking be lacking without him, because the casuals still probably won't know him. But you bring this guy over, undefeated Nurmagomedov, they're going to fucking have a stroke. Kenny Okoye is going to fucking pull his braids out. And yeah, it's going to be, everyone's going to be like, oh my God, inshallah, brother, new champion, brother. And it'll be good. So yeah, bring Usman over. I don't want more of these inbreds in the sport, but, like, Usman's actually not, like, a super boring fighter. Like, he's alright. So we can bring him over, because no one's going to care about Beneil. I feel bad for him, but, like, no one's going to care. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Next up, we got Saladin Parnasse for Jalen Turner to trade him for Jalen Turner. Now, look, in with one N, out with another N, you know what I'm saying? But no. Saladin Parnasse is actually really good. Now, if you look at his record, he's 19-2. One of his losses, I'm pretty sure, was via injury, because it says TKO via forearm strike, and then he rematched the dude and beat him. So I assume it was I haven't watched the fight. Did you watch the whole fight? Do your fucking job next time. But I haven't watched the fight, but just based off, like, the description of it, TKO via forearm strike. And then he rematched him and won easily. So that's what I'm assuming. I'm assuming it was an injury, assuming it was fluky. And his other loss, which was 2 fights ago, was against a 15-0 Polish dude who I'm about to talk about in a second, who's a welterweight, because Saladin Parnasse was the featherweight champion at KSW, he's the lightweight champion at KSW, and he moved up to welterweight to try and win a 3rd belt. You can, like, I'm going to talk about Anatoly Malikin later on. He's like a middleweight, light heavyweight, heavyweight champion. But ONE FC's divisions are whack, because their light heavyweight is like 225 and their middleweight is like 205. So it's not actually as big of a range gap as you think it is. Like this, Anatoly Malikin is not 185 pounds. That's why ONE's weight classes are retarded. But Saladin Parnasse, he tried to do 3-division champ at, like, in the middleweight classes. Like, that's fucked. From 145 to 170 is nuts. And he lost to a 15-0 undefeated Polish guy. So, like, no shame there. Parnasse is real good. He beat Vucenic, I'm pretty sure. I think he's beat Paul Hughes, or he's beat, like, Sharia. He's beat a lot of those kind of well-known, like, KSW, Cage Warriors guys on the regional scene. So, Parnasse is good. And Jalen Turner, I fucking hate Jalen Turner. So no one's going to care. I mean, I want him to fight Dober before he leaves. I'd like to see that fight. But if that can't happen, if there's no other reason for him to be in the sport if it's not going to be to fight Dober. So get Jalen Turner out of here. Parnasse is good. Get another French guy in the UFC. Another guy to, like, main event if they go to France, or put in the co-main event would be sick. And yeah, maybe even I doubt they'd fight because they're countrymen. But, like, if I can imagine him and, like, BSD, like, that'd be nuts. But anyway, let's move on to another fighter. Next up, we're going to trade Adrian Bartoszynski for Mateusz Gamrot. Now, these guys are different weight classes. Gamrot's a lightweight, obviously, you know that. This Polish dude, Bartoszynski or whatever. I'm acting like I know these fighters, like I'm a fucking hardcore fan. I mean, I am a hardcore fan of the UFC, but, like, I don't watch KSW. I'm sorry. It's in Poland. It's at, like, 2 a.m. Australia time. I ain't watching that shit. I'll watch the highlights stuff. But no, this guy beat Parnasse. He's good. He's undefeated. He's Polish. We need more Polish fighters in the UFC. Gives him an excuse to go back to Poland. He looks like a fucking autistic cunt, I swear. He looks downs. But he's a pretty good fighter from what I've seen. So yeah, I think he's got a fight booked too. So keep an eye on some of these guys as well. This will give you someone to look out for. Check their Sherdogs and shit. I'm not even going to tell you to watch the fights because you're not even going to know how to. Because fuck knows how you watch KSW. But find the highlights or something. Look at these guys' Sherdogs. Check if they win or not. See if they keep the streak going. Because, yeah, this guy seems pretty good. I don't know much about him, but I know a little bit about Parnasse, and I know Parnasse is good, and he beat Parnasse. But this, like, 11 of this guy's 15 wins are by TKO. I know that. 11 wins by TKO, and his win against Parnasse was only his second decision. So, like, that shows Panas didn't go up and get, like, smoked up a weight class. Like, he went up and had a competitive decision with him and lost. So, like, both of these guys are real good. I think both of them are actually valuable guys to the UFC. And Gamrot, I mean, look, it's tough for Gamrot, but if he beat Dan Hooker, I probably wouldn't have him here. But he lost to Dan Hooker. I just don't see him getting his way back to a top 5 guy or title fight. I think he can go Polish for Polish guy, out with one, in with another. And just upgrade, I guess, or get a Polish welterweight, because when have we had a fucking Polish welterweight? Anyway, let's move on, though, to another fighter. Look, we're trading out a black person and we're bringing in a Dagestani person, so it's like a fucking... It's a positive and a negative, or it's a positive and negative. We're getting rid of the black, we're implementing a Dagestani. I'm kidding. But no, Shamil Musayev or whatever, again, undefeated Russian guy, looks inbred, is inbred, will succeed in the UFC. I rest my case. Jeff Neal, he's going to beat RDA, but we really don't need to keep Neal around. Like, he has fun fights, I guess, but the Gary fight was kind of dead, and he doesn't fight all that often. He's pretty inactive, so, like, I don't think it would be a crazy... And also, we actually don't have any Russian welterweights. I'm saying that before I sound like a casual. I don't think we have any Russian welterweights. Am I tripping? We don't. So, like, get this guy in there. I mean, I'm not saying we need a Russian welterweight. Like, Shavkat's close enough. He's good. But unless I'm just bugging, let me know if I'm a casual and I forgot. But, like, I mean, like, in the top 15, like, I know we got, like, Renat and shit. But, like, Musayev seems pretty good. He's undefeated. I actually posted saying, like, what are some trades you guys would want to see? And someone said Colby Covington for Shamil Musayev. So I'm like, all right, if you're saying we get rid of Colby, I'm all for that. Let me look up who this guy is. So, yeah. Inbred, undefeated, best base for MMA. Ends in EV as well, name. So he's going to be a future champion. Let's move on, though, to another trade. Next up, this is probably the only trade that isn't a positive for the UFC. Sean Brady for Ramazan Kuramagomedov. I don't know why I did it in this order. Like, I would have said Musayev at least for Brady and then this guy for fucking Jeff Neal. But this guy's also undefeated fucking EV. I think there's a limit. There's a cap to how many of them we want. But again, get some of these guys in. How about we trade both of these guys in, get rid of Brady because no one cares about him, and he's basically Dagestani, but just not Dagestani. Like, if this guy's name was fucking Shaunemegov fucking Bradyov or some shit, like, and he had a beard, and he had a chin strap beard, and a buzz cut, like, everyone would just think this guy is the best fucking thing to ever exist. It's just, I mean, he did get finished by Bilal, but, like, Brady is basically Dagestani, but just without the ethnic background, to be fair. That's what he fights like. But I think we can get rid of Brady. I mean, he lost to Bilal, so it's not like I don't think he's good. I just don't think he's going to get a fucking title shot. Like, I don't think you can lose to Bilal by TKO and get a title shot. Like, Brady just doesn't, like, you know when you kind of envision, like, could I see this guy fighting for a belt? Like, I envision Diego Lopez fighting for a belt. I envision fucking Carlos Prates maybe fighting for a belt. I don't envision Sean Brady fighting for a belt. It just doesn't seem like, I feel like he's just destined to main event Apex cards. So we can bring in another one of these Dagestani fucking Ergomedovs and have them in the sport, and we'll see what happens. I don't know anything about this guy. I just looked him up. Let's move on, though, to the next fight. Next up, to the middleweight division. Brandon Allen, my least favourite fighter on the roster, maybe, beside Mario Batista. He can trade to Bellator, PFL, whatever, and we can get Johnny Eblen, and we can see if Johnny Eblen is good. Because, honestly, I will not call someone good until they beat a UFC fighter. Like, I know he's probably beat a few. Like, he beat Impa, but, like, Impa's mid. But, like, if this guy comes over, and I think a good test for him at the start is, like, a Cannonier fight or something. Because it's, like, if it's some other guy, like, I'm like, okay, give him, like, a close to unranked guy. But I think Eblen, he's an established champion. Even some of, like, the semi kind of hardcore casual fans know him. Like, he's trained with Strickland and shit. He's good. Eblen's solid. I do think he's quite good. So, bring him over, have him fight Cannonier. Brandon Allen, you can fuck right off. You can fight Vettori, and you can win or lose. I don't care. You're leaving after that. We need that one interesting fight. I mean, to be fair, Brandon Allen is a little bit interesting in terms of, like, he'll randomly yap and be a bit annoying. Like, I could say get rid of him from Cannonier, but I don't think a promotion's going to accept a trade for, like, their best middleweight for Cannonier, who's, like, 40. Like, I don't think that's going to... Even though Cannonier probably would just whoop all their guys' ass, which they probably don't want. They probably don't want it to be evidently clear that a UFC fighter is just way better than their guys. But yeah, Eblin, bring him over. He'll have some fun fights. He'll be solid. I don't know how old he is. I think he's young-ish, maybe. Or maybe he's old. I don't know. But bring him over. It'll be good fun. Let's move on, though, to another fight. Next up, we got light heavyweight Nikita Krylov. Who the fuck? Where's this guy been? I know he's booked. He's fighting Mezakhanov. He's probably going to lose. And then we can trade him for Vadim Nemkov. Because Nemkov is quite good. And he's solid. And, you know... Again, Nemkov. Like, if we're going to trade one fucking Russian, if we're going to bring in a Russian, we'll get rid of a Russian. You know, we can't overflood the fucking divisions with Russians. Even though the light heavyweight division is basically the fucking European Union, fucking communist bloc of 1930 or some shit. Like, it is just World War II Europe edition in the light heavyweight division. Like, this, apart from Pereira, like, all the fucking countries, everyone, and, like, Johnny Walker and, like, Kalia Roundtree. Everyone else is just fucking Europeans. Like, we got Serbia, we got Austria, we got fucking Czech Republic, we got Poland, like, we got everything. And we got Ukraine as well with Krylov, you know. Light heavyweight's an interesting division. But yeah, I think we bring over Nemkov. Again, test the theory of these casual fans being like, I don't know, man, I think Nemkov would be problems. Like, I mean, he maybe could beat Pereira, I don't know, just based off his name ending in OV. He's probably born with just plus 10 wrestling genetics. But yeah, let's see how he goes in the UFC. Let's move on, though, to the final trade. Next up, heavyweight division, Anatoly Malakin against trading for Alexander Volkov. Now, this is another one of the bigger ones, another one of the more, like, notable ones. Like, if the UFC traded, like, fucking Jeff Neal, like, no one would really make a massive kind of fuss about it. I think if they traded Volkov, it would draw some interest. Like, Volkov's not a super casually known fan. Probably the only clips casuals have seen of Volkov is him getting knocked out by Lewis, and then the balls was hot clip. But, like, Volkov is a well-respected top 5, minimum top 10, top 5 guy easily, who just beat Pavlovich. So I think he's very good. Now, it's not like I'm trading him because I don't think he's good, but I'm trading him preemptively assuming he's going to lose to Cyril Gane. If Gane loses, fucking get rid of Gane, honestly. He's a nuisance. No, this is not good matchup for me. I must go to 1FC, otherwise I cannot get title shot. I must only fight up the rankings. But Anatoly Malakin, 3-division champion, you can just put a fucking photo of this guy up with 3 belts and shit just looks tough. Like, I've watched him fight like twice. Like, I watched him fight some fucking Punjab Pajit dude, and I watched him fight Dorito when he KO'd him. But Malakin's good. He looks roided to the fucking gills. He probably is roided to the gills. But who cares? It's fucking, let's bring back OG heavyweight. Fuck all these fat fucks. I know that there were fat fucks back then. But, like, let's get rid of all these dumb fucking obese Sergey Spivak in the top 10 of your division. And let's just get guys on roids. Like, Almeida might be retarded and shit, but, like, at least he's athletic. At least he takes his career seriously. Like, I'm sorry, Marcin Tybura is a top 10 heavyweight. Like, that's disgraceful. So let's bring over some of these guys. Let's bring over Malakin. Let's bring over maybe Hernan Fajea. I don't have him in this video because I think he's going to get slept by Francis. And I think if he does get slept by Francis, the UFC is going to be like, why the fuck would we sign this guy? If he KOs Francis, they might be like, oh yeah, let's bring him over. But I think either way, it's actually a bad situation for Fajea in terms of if he wants to ever make it to the UFC. I don't know if he does. But if he KOs Ngannou, sick for him. That gets him some casual appeal, I guess. But the UFC is not going to want him because they're going to be like, oh, I don't want to... They were pushing like, oh, Ngannou was the best guy and then Jones was the best guy or whatever. But if like Fajea smokes Ngannou, it's not the best look for them to be like, Ngannou didn't lose in the UFC and he immediately goes and leaves. So even the UFC then might want to be like, I don't really want to... Or they might just sign him and then have him get KO'd by Aspinall. But I think Hernan Fajea is kind of mid. Like, I don't think he's that good. He KO'd Ryan Bader, who was like 43 and fucking fat and short. He's athletic for sure. But yeah, again, let's bring over some more athletic guys. Fajea, I don't mind. I don't know which other good heavyweights there are, to be honest. But yeah, we can bring over some more. It'll be good. And let's get some of these non-fat fucks over to the UFC. Malakin, you can't tell me you wouldn't watch the fuck out of Anatoly Malakin versus Sergey Pavlovich. Like, come on. I'm fucking cooking with that matchup. Like, I know Volkov beat Pavlovich, and you can say he's better than Pavlovich, but like, Pavlovich versus Malakin is just going to be fucking 2 Russian juice heads just chucking him, and then someone's going to die, and it's going to be amazing. That shit would be hype. But that is the end of the video, guys. Like, subscribe, leave a comment. What other trades would you want to see the UFC make. Let me know if I was cooking with some of these trades. Drop some other videos you guys want to see in the comments. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.